It's a standoff born of a war 4 decades ago. The flags of each nationality still fly opposite each other across a United Nations-controlled buffer zone, which stretches the entire 180-mile length of the island and cuts right through the divided capital city, Nicosia. The whole city is divided in two.
Yes, with one street.
This is like the Berlin Wall
Exactly.
of Nicosia.
Exactly. Only there isn't a wall. You see the UN patrols? They're doing their patrol at the moment to make sure that nobody is in.
Yeah, there's a bit of the wall there, let's see. Just next to a cafe. It's funny. Yeah, and there's where we were before, just over there. Yeah, there's no man's land.
It's a standoff born of a war 4 decades ago. The flags of each nationality still fly opposite each other across a United Nations-controlled buffer zone right through the divided capital city. The buffer zone was supposed to be temporary, but partition went on year after year with failed negotiations. The whole city is divided in two.
Yes, with one street.
This is like the Berlin Wall.
Exactly. Only there isn't a wall. You see the UN patrols? They're doing their patrol at the moment to make sure that nobody is in.
We saw a bizarre maze of ruins, crumbled walls, home to nothing but the occasional stray cat or dog. These armed soldiers are the only other sign of life in the buffer zone.
Wandering the old part of town, and you'll suddenly come up against this blue and white barrier, and you can go no further, and it'll sometimes be just in the middle of a street, and within that buffer zone there are these dilapidated buildings.
Yeah, some of the stuff hasn't been touched for like 50 years. It's like in ruins, I suppose. Hang on. Yeah, there's a bit of the wall there, let's see. Just next to a cafe. It's funny. Yeah, and there's where we were before, just over there. Yeah, there's no man's land.
We've had many times when our hopes had risen and we thought, oh, tomorrow it'll be over. We'll join our land again, you know, etc. Always fell flat on our face.
Border Patrol Chief Aaron Hull says a physical barrier is critical in this urban area to prevent people from illegally crossing the border and escaping into busy city streets.
It's a very solid structure, but it enables us to see through it so we can see what's going on the south side and be prepared to react.
There's not much of a river as a border. It's funny. As you can see, barely anything. It's hard to see, but it's really like a little body of water, like a runoff from the rain.
This wall is going to be at least 18 feet high above the grade.
Border Patrol Chief Aaron Hull says a physical barrier is critical in this urban area to prevent people from illegally crossing the border and escaping into busy city streets.
It's a very solid structure, but it enables us to see through it so we can see what's going on the south side and be prepared to react.
If you cross the wall, you will be in violation of U.S. federal immigration law, and you will be arrested.
Okay, so we're walking back, and as you can see, it's a lot faster to walk than to drive. I'm getting a little tired now because we've been walking for hours, but it's still worth it to walk. Because look what you get stuck with if you drive. There's not much of a river as a border. It's funny. As you can see, it's barely anything. It's hard to see, but it's really like a little body of water, like a runoff from the rain.
No wall is going to stop everyone from crossing the border illegally. No form of barrier is ever going to do that. It's not intended to do that. It's intended to discourage them, to make it more difficult.
Customs and Border Protection recently added new razor wire at international border crossings to keep crowds of migrants seeking asylum from overrunning legal ports of entry.
This is a really safe city, and it just makes you feel unsafe somehow. Like all that wire they put there, it just looks horrible. It's like it's threatening in an issue that's not really threatening us here.
Israeli checkpoints in the occupied West Bank. One of the little reported aspects of the continuing conflict between Israel and the Palestinians. They've become part of everyday life for thousands of Palestinians who have to pass through them daily. Critics say they're a form of collective punishment, effectively sealing off Palestinian cities, hindering travel and access to schools and medical care, increasing frustrations, and jeopardizing any hopes for peace.
This city is divided on several levels. It's cut off from the surrounding villages. Only a few thousand Palestinians cross into Israel to work each day, and only if they have a permit.
Israelis become much more skeptical that Palestinians will ever accept peace or that it's even worth trying. Israeli politics shift right, the country builds walls and checkpoints to control Palestinians' movements. They're not really trying to solve the conflict anymore, just manage it. The Palestinians are left feeling like negotiating didn't work, and violence didn't work, and that they're stuck under an ever-growing occupation with no future as a people.
Checkpoints have become part of everyday life for thousands who have to pass through them daily. Critics say they're a form of collective punishment, effectively sealing off cities, hindering travel and access to schools and medical care, increasing frustrations, and jeopardizing any hopes for peace.
Sometimes a half-hour drive can take several hours, and sometimes they are forced to simply sit and wait. It takes time, it's uncomfortable, and even invasive. But these soldiers are responsible for maintaining security.
It's to balance between the needs to conduct a security check and, on the other hand, give them a quality of life, to let them carry out their routines.
This daily obstacle is at the very least an inconvenience. But in an area so familiar with violence and terror attacks, it is impossible to ignore the dangers.
We're demonstrating here because for the past few weeks has basically put up roadblocks all around the neighborhoods. They say that this is to do with the security situation and that it's meant to help protect, but in reality we think that this is only done basically to make lives miserable.
This 54-kilometer wall is changing people's lives. This city is divided on several levels. It's cut off from the surrounding villages. Only a few thousand cross each day, and only if they have a permit.
They're not really trying to solve the conflict anymore, just manage it.
Now, you'll see here on my right, this is the peace line. So this is the wall. This wall here, yeah? And this wall separates Protestants from Catholics.
Everywhere there are flags marking out Unionist and Nationalist territory, and murals celebrating the paramilitaries.
It's a compelling sight, the parades that wind their way down the Shankill Road, in the heart of Belfast's Protestant community.
That's what I was brought up to believe in too, it's my culture.
For Joanne Harrison and her husband Tommy, the parades are a family tradition, but also a matter of self-preservation.
Have to keep the culture going.
Keep it going, have to keep walking.
You'll see here on my right, this is the peace line. So this is the wall.
This wall here, yeah?
There's actually, believe it or not, in and around 40 of these walls. Because of sectarianism, they're building walls to separate communities. Now, this is the biggest one there is. Yeah. The longest, to prevent them throwing stones over.
Just stones?
Well, stones, maybe petrol bombs.
It's a compelling sight, The parades that wind their way down the Shankill Road.
Have to keep the culture going.
We have to keep it going. We have to keep walking.
You have to keep it going. Why?
If we don't, the other side's going to take over.
While a great deal of the year the streets here are calm, that changes during the marching season with the palpable culture clash the parades bring.
Parades can cause very real tension.
I can see every lamppost has got a flag.
They've always flown flags in communities. That's a way of identifying the type of neighbourhood.
I'm surprised to find people still marking out their territory so blatantly.
It's not the first time that walls have been built, you know. They've been there for 400 years, you know. And walls aren't just built of bricks and mortar. They can be built with legislation and laws and, you know, prejudice.
But remember that there is that tribalism. And sometimes the latent tribalism gets permission to come out and raise its ugly head. And it's just so great when people can travel and go over these walls, because walls keep people apart, and that means people can't talk. And that lets hate and fear be more powerful than it should be.